definitely helps. All right, we are live. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 7th Joint School Board Budget Committee Budget Review Meeting. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to begin with the pledge tonight. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I appreciate everyone coming out tonight and participating in our first of two budget review sessions. This looks and feels a little bit different than the past budget review sessions, just in terms of the room layout. That's intentional. I want this to be more collaborative than it has been in the past. Hopefully everyone feels that, and it is more of a team type of environment as we approach this particular year's budget and going forward. The budget, you all have it. It was sent to you back on October 29th. We're all going to go through it tonight together, along with next Wednesday, the 13th. The superintendent is going to take it over and present a summary of highlights, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Coder. Hi, everybody. If you don't know who I am, and I know I went to a budget committee earlier this year, but that was a while ago and a few budget reviews ago because you've been working on the town stuff. I'm Brian O'Connell, the new superintendent here in the Litchfield School District. We've had a great start to the school year. Excited to dive into this part of the school year. Always find this stuff fascinating. It's been something, budget's been an area of mine when I was an assistant principal, and now I'm the superintendent. So I always find this fun and part of the process. Maybe that's fun is not the best word, but I do find it's enjoyable going through. Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and trying to make it all work. It's like a big puzzle, trying to piece it all together. So thank you all. This is a nice approach compared to other places I've been, and how we handle the budget, that we can sit down together and kind of go over this. So we have a presentation tonight. I'm going to give an overview of our budget. Hopefully you've all got the updates. We'll go into more detail about this in a moment, but we got our health insurance official number yesterday, so we updated accordingly. In our books there, Holly was helping pass out new sections of the book that you can replace in your book, so we have more accurate numbers as we talk about everything this evening. And then this is a process. We're going to present to you what we call a superintendent budget, so that what we've worked on from the school level, from the leaders in the buildings, from feedback from the staff, we're presenting that to the board, obviously tonight, the school board and the budget committee. And we understand it's a collaborative process. What we present to you tonight is not what we're going to end up with when we go to vote in March. We understand that. It's what we think is the right thing to do, but that's from our perspective, and we're all coming from our different perspectives. So it's just part of the process, and we'll work through it together, and hopefully I'll get to a place where we're all satisfied with and happy in the end. So I'm going to start. We'll have, when we have our principals and Holly present later, I'll have them introduce themselves, but we have the support from many of our directors here as well. And so rather than go through a lengthy introduction list, we'll have people introduce themselves as they present. So I want to kind of give you an overview of our goals this year. So thankfully, nicely, coincidentally, the board was up for new goals this year as we kind of started a new school year this year, which worked well as we had a number of new people kind of enter the district. So I won't go through all the goals. We've done this at meetings in the past, but there's 5 big goals we're focused on for the next 3 years here in the school district and through the board. Number one thing, obviously in schools, we want to cultivate a love of learning, make sure where our students, as they're attending school, love what they're doing so they can be successful and grow. We want to build a supportive communities within our schools, supportive community within the town of Litchfield, and all of our partners that we're working with. We want to facilitate successful transitions, and what we mean by that is transitions in schools. So as our students enter school at the beginning, whether it's pre-K or kindergarten, that's a successful transition for them. As they go from 4th to 5th, that's a successful transition, 8 to 9, and then post-high school with whatever their plans are after that. And then any transitions that they have within that, whether that's maybe entering special ed or exiting special ed, so on and so forth. So that's what that goal is focused on. We obviously want to enhance and maintain our facilities. It's a big important thing of what we do in the schools. Obviously learning is our number one focus, but making sure that environment is safe for them and that our kids can be successful is a big piece of that. And communication is huge. Communication, connecting with all of our stakeholders. Schools are a product of their communities, of their towns, of where they are, and there's stakeholders from all around coming from different perspectives. So we want to respect that and make sure we hear and connect with everybody. So as we go into our budget development this year, a number of key factors as we kind of work through it that we want to keep people in mind with. We want to be honest up front with this. This is a year of transition for the district. We have 4 new SAU administrators, myself, the superintendent, Julie Darling, our business administrator, Dr. Sarah Taylor, who's our new director of curriculum instruction and assessment, and then we call her doctor, she's not really, but you can call her a doctor someday. But Sarah Pooler, our director of special education here. So that year of transition is good. It brings excitement, it brings energy, it brings new people to it. Everybody's been wonderful for us so far. But we've only all been on the jobs for about 4 months at the most here, a little over 4 months. So we're still learning operations, the finances, the dynamics of everything here in the district. And that leads to us in this particular budget kind of favoring more consistency over change right now. A year from now, we could be coming with different things because we've had a year under our belt, and this is something we need to change, whether it be a suggestion with staffing, a suggestion in programmatic things, those type of things. You'll see a little bit of it with the budget, but right now we're still getting everything underneath us, so we're looking at consistency is what we're valuing right now. In any dynamics with any district, not just here, but anywhere you want to be fiscally responsible. We're utilizing the taxpayers' money, the community's money. We want to make sure we're wise about that and we're making good decisions about that. We keep that in mind as we budget. That's an important part of this. We want to recognize that. And the last thing is collaboration. Schools can't do it on their own. You know, whether we're collaborating with families, we're collaborating with community partners, community members here today in this environment as we sit around the table together to collaborate here. That's a big key to this, to make sure that we're being open, honest with each other so we can get to a good result at the end. So now let's get into some of the fun here. So enrollment projections, so I'm just going to show a quick overview and try to zoom in here so we can see it. This is our kind of enrollment projections this year. The previous superintendent and staff here had their own kind of projections for it. I'm going to kind of zero in here a little bit, just, oops, maybe I'm not. All right, but the old projection model kind of showed that we was not 100% accurate. That's okay, that's not a judgment. These things are really hard to do, is to project enrollment to 100% accuracy of what we're doing. So you saw some swings and some differences in this current school year that we're doing, where the actuals were a little bit lower than the projected numbers last year. So we wanted to keep that in mind as we kind of did our projections. We used a slightly different projection model this year that was more reliant on birth rates more than anything else as we kind of did it for that initial kindergarten class. And then we kind of did a retention formula to see if we could project numbers. Retention is much easier. You know, kids usually stay in school. You can kind of move them forward one grade to another. Sometimes there's a little dip, one or other. Some of that is around that transition period where you can see changes ebb and flow a little bit. But overall, our projection numbers are pretty steady next year. We anticipate a slight increase in the elementary school, where right now, this was October 1st data, we were at 428 pre-K through 4. We project that out to 437 next year. Middle school, again, roughly about the same numbers. It's 344 this year, slight uptick to 346. And we are expecting a little bit of decline at the high school next year. We're at 343 was our October 1st date, and we're down to about 320 is what we're projecting out next year. We had a bigger class exiting us this year, not as big of a class entering, and that's part of the formula when we talk about high school projection. I do want to make one note when we talk about projection, because I think this is going to be important. We do anticipate a bump the year after, so 26, 27. You're going to hear the term in towns all over the place, COVID babies. So that is when the age of youngsters who may have been born during the COVID pandemic, and there may have been a lot more babies born during that pandemic. We all went to health class back in the day. So we're going to anticipate a little bit of bump. The town of Litchfield's birth rate is much higher that year, equivalent year, as we project that out to kindergarten. So we would expect that same number to track out when we see that kindergarten class arrive. It goes down a little bit a year after, but still projecting out a little bit higher the year after that. So that is going to be a projected, probably slight bump. This doesn't factor in any of the developments or anything in town along those lines. Those can be kind of tricky sometimes to figure out what their kind of impact is on students as people come in and out of town. So this is strictly a birth rate and then retention type of projection here. Out of curiosity, and I'm happy to share any of these documents with anybody, and we'll obviously make this all public for whoever wants to see it. This is always an interesting data sheet. It's just cohort tracking. You can see a track of kids as they kind of come through the entire grade system. You can see that over time. You will do a note, I think it's 18-19 is when full year kindergarten came here to the district, so that's why there's a jarring jump in the number of kindergarten kids in that class, because that's when full-time kindergarten came here. And it's just interesting to see over time, see the history and track different cohorts of groups as they kind of come through. So that's not necessarily going to be a huge part of anything we're doing this evening, but it is interesting data when we talk about enrollment projections and looking at enrollment in general. This is a spreadsheet. I'm not going to click on it. It's just the two documents there, not in PDF form. All right, before we jump into it, just a couple of really, really big things to talk about that are and are not included in our budget kind of proposal this evening. One of the things that's important to remind people about is we have the LMS lease payment that we're continuing to pay off of. It's a big chunk of change, about $343,000. That is still part of our budget proposal here. Included in this is going to be a reduction of 10 paraprofessional positions. And I want to clarify this a little bit to help people understand. We have paraprofessional positions that we have in IEPs that are designated and written to IEPs that we need to support our students. None of these positions are those positions. These are positions that are not specifically tied to an IEP in any shape or form. These are additional paraprofessional positions that are currently in the budget. These positions are vacant right now. They are not filled right now. We also have some paraprofessional positions that are kind of tied into IEPs that still unfortunately remain vacant, that are going to remain in the budget because we have them tied to IEPs. But the ones that are not specifically tied to any student's IEP, that reduction is coming in this budget proposal here. It's a total of 10. It's technically 3 from GMS, 8 at LMS, and we need one additional one projecting out to CHS next year, so the net total of those positions is 10 paraprofessional positions. So that does include that reduction in here when we talk about salary, benefits, so on and so forth. What doesn't include in here is the food service budget. It is in your binders as part of your packet, but it's not part of the Fund 10 budget that we go over because it's considered a different account. Anything we gain or not gain from that is considered revenue type of value that comes into our budget at a later date. If we talk about food service deficits, which is common in school districts in the state of New Hampshire, that is something that comes through that food service line. Right now, the district has essentially budgeted for a food service deficit for this current school year. We would continue to do in that model, but that model is going to show up in a revenue formula. It's not going to show up in your Fund 10 budget that you have in front of you today. We have come to an agreement with the LSSA that obviously has to go to warrant, has to be voted on by the town. But those increases that are part of the LSSA agreement beyond the health insurance and dental, the salary increase is not going to show up here this evening yet in the proposal. And obviously, if we have new staff, when we talk about personnel, we haven't added those in, then we got to bring that to the table to discuss with everyone as we go too. So that's kind of a quick overview of some major things that are and are not in the budget. I'll pause there if there are any questions. We'll keep going. All right, so we're going to go summary. My thing is big picture, and then we're going to drill down from here, and we'll let principals and directors talk about the smaller things. So the FY25 budget, so what we were voted on last March at warrant, was almost $26 million, $25,970,381. What we have proposed this evening is a budget of $27,691.98. We'll explain where this increase is coming from momentarily, but that's the big summary. We got to get that out of the way.
So
We're talking big numbers. Yeah.
That number for 25, does that include the one-time transfers for warrant articles as well?
No. So that's what was voted on in March. We want to designate that difference because this is
Okay.
what we would bring to March.
Right, I just want to make sure that the number is not...
Correct. The number that is on the full sheet, like when you see the full Fund 10, does include those things
Okay.
that we carry over at the end of the school year. So it's a 26, I don't remember the specific number.
548,
but
26,
yeah.
548.
So that includes, you bring over capital reserve funds and so on and so forth. But this increases what the voting difference will be when we vote in 26, so for the 26, FY26. We're going to talk about 5 kind of categories tonight that are the major drivers of this increase. Things that are locked in, that we have minimal control over on what these things are. Obviously, we have control over everything, but at the same time, we don't. We have contracts we have to fulfill that we're in the middle of, those type of things. What has traditionally happened here as part of this budget process is bottom line cuts to rather specific areas of the budget or overall. So we like to reset that when we go into a new budget season, restore those kind of bottom line cooks, and then if we elect to do that again in the future, we can do that. But we like to restore it first and then kind of go backwards with that. Specialized instruction, that's specifically, we're going to talk about special education and CTE when we get to that particular category. Other personnel that are not necessarily contract-driven or collective bargaining driven. And then another significant consideration that we have as part of our budget proposal this evening that we'll talk about. So I jumped in on kind of these locked-in expenses that we kind of have. We have a collective bargaining agreement with the LEA, the Teachers Association here. That's going to be in the final year next year, and that's going to include increases what is already voted on in that contract of a little over $500,000. So we're into that, and all of these staffing numbers here are based on maintaining current staffing levels, with the exception of that paraprofessional reduction. So everything else we have in here, talking professional staff here. With the LEA salary, is that's maintaining our current teacher numbers that we have throughout the district and at all three schools. Along those are health insurance and dental increases. We got the official figures for that. We got dental last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but dental was 5%, health was 12.4%. So those are what the final numbers are. Again, this is based upon current plans and current staffing and everyone kind of maintaining those levels. Social Security, part of that kind of personnel, that salary and benefits line. This could fluctuate a little bit based on where we settle with non-union staff when we can't talk about final dollar marks there, but based upon what we have proposed in here, it's a little over $24,000. Transportation, we're in the second year of a 5-year contract with First Student, who is our bus company and provider. So this is based on depending on the very, very specific type of route, co-curricular, regular bus route, special ed, and it's either 6.4 or 6.5 increase on the daily rate. So when we group that all together, this includes our regular transportation, so morning and afternoon runs, late afternoon, late bus, whatever we call it here, late bus transportation, our special education transportation, our athletic transportation, co-curricular, which would include field trips and any club and activities related to that. All those transportation lines together, based upon that contract that we have first, would see an increase of about a little over $49,000. Utilities, this is gas, electric, and water for the entire district. When we do that math together, and we'll break it down slightly as we go through here, it's a little over 20, or closer to 28,000, but 27,909. We're actually going down in water costs. That's what we're projecting out next year. Gas up a little bit, and then electrical up, making up the biggest chunk of that. We got to turn the lights on and heat stuff, so that's we got to do that to do that. This is a big locked-in thing that you will see. We're up for a sprinklers inspection at CHS. It's a once every 10-year requirement fire inspection, since we have sprinklers in the building at CHS. It's not really negotiable. They got to come inspect the sprinklers. So it's $13,000. It's a significant cost. It's once every 10 years. You're going to see it this year. That lineup went up by that. And it's $13,000. We also have a handful of other contracts that were locked in. These include things such as our athletic trainer contract, our finance program contract, snow plowing, other contracts that we have with vendors that we have that we're locked into, whether they're in 2 years, 3 year, whatever the length is, but we're not at the end of a contract yet. So those all kind of together come up to about $25,000. So the kind of locked-in expenses that we have that we're starting with is a little over $1 million, which is making up a big chunk of that 1.1 and 7 increase that we're seeing. Just restoration of the bottom line. Again, good budgeting practices. We re-put in the bottom line budgets and cuts that we do when we approach the next year's budget. So we're restoring those. The three kind of categories, these were in last year, were an attrition kind of cut, a personnel cut, and then a special services, special education cut. So when you put those in together, it's about $100,000 there. 444, excuse me. And again, we're going to go into more detail. I'm doing the big overview of these things, so let's talk about special ed right now. Sarah Pula will go into great detail about this when we get to her section next week. But to give you a quick overview of it with our special education services, we're going to see out of district. That out of district number is incorrect. I apologize. I'm looking at it right now. It's closer to 180, 85. I combined the professional services in that. I apologize for that. But that's about 185,000 is that. Professional services and out of district placement are for students that are by IEP where we're having their educational services provided outside of the school district. And that's, is a big cost that we can go into detail about. Professional services could be things when we bring in hearing specialists, vision specialists, things designated by IEPs to work with it, behaviorists, whatever the course may be. We have a number of contracted services that we come in and we utilize for our special education students based upon their IEPs. And then the CTE cost is the cost of sending our students to Alvern for part of the CTE program. We do have a handful of kids that go to other programs. Currently, we have a couple of kids that are also going to Pinkerton for their CTE program, but we base that figure on the tuition rate for Alvern based upon the current number of students we have in CTE. So that would be an increase of about $23,000. Other personnel, not every one of our personnel is obviously as part of a collective bargaining agreement. We have both support staff, administration, and professional staff, kind of all three of those categories who are not in unions, for example. The sum of all that, we've put in a 4% increase for our non-union staff, and when you add that all up into a salary realm, it's about $117,000. We also have anticipated track changes for our teachers. Obviously, if the teachers, for example, is gaining college credits in the courses and can kind of slide along the pay scale there, maybe they're going from a bachelor's to a bachelor's plus 15, or they've obtained their master's degree. We can anticipate some of those because they're doing their courses and being reimbursed through us as part of what we have set up for them contractually. So if we have a teacher who's finishing up and going to get their master's in the spring, we can anticipate they're going to make a request for a track change for next school year, so we can put some of that in. So these are not quite as locked in. For example, non-union increase is something we talk through the budget process. It is not bound by contractual agreement. I'm sure that's something we will discuss in some capacity here. And again, anticipated track changes, just because someone has moved forward with those education courses and for whatever reason maybe not finish them, or something goes off a plan, we could have someone who doesn't necessarily finish off that track that we anticipate here in October and November. We have one last big consideration, and that's the LMS parking lot that we have in our grounds budget currently. This would be a complete kind of restoration of the parking lot down there, filling in potholes, repaving, doing some other under the ground stuff to make sure that it's level and not going to fall apart as we drive it. We have included it as part of the proposed budget here, and we can talk about how some of those needs can be accomplished when we talk about this type of project and everything. But it is part of here, and it's a big chunk of change with over $57,000. So when we put all that together, these drivers of our increase, those kind of locked-in expenses, the restoration of the bottom line, specialized instruction, personnel, that are the big consideration. We're at about $1,880,982 in that increase. Why that is relevant, I would like to talk about that, is when we looked at our FY26 increase, it was about 1.7 million. And that drivers that we talked about, those things that, yes, we have a little bit of control over, but not a ton of it, is about 1.8 million. And we are actually, everything else in our budget is under. And I think that's important. That comes to that trying to be fiscally responsible. We see and we anticipate those big drivers that we know are going to push the budget up and are going to increase it. So what can we do with everything else to try and make it worthwhile and better for people? And we made a conscious effort of looking at little things, and little things can add up to big things over time, and that's what we've tried to do. To give you a quick example, I know everyone was watching the board meeting last night, I'm sure, with bated breath, but it's a very simple, and it's not a big expense, but we talked about how we readjusted one of our policies when it comes to activity reservations of our facilities and stuff like that. And we've been using a program called School Dude to do that. It's about $5,000, that aspect of particular School Dude. We reworked that policy, reworked some of the framework and the forms for that, so we don't need that anymore. So that's a little thing that we noticed, we cut out, we can get rid of that, and that saves and helps us kind of over time do little things. And those are things that as we move forward with the new team kind of in place, working with the people here, where we see different opportunities where here and there we can do things a little bit better, a little bit more responsible, we're going to take those opportunities. So as that continues this year, hopefully there's more of that in the future. So that's the big, I guess I'll go before we get to Dan, that's the kind of big overview, and I can pause there to answer any questions or hear feedback or thoughts on anything from anybody.
Any questions? School board or budget committee?
And it's okay, we said, we sent the school board a Google sheet that they can put their questions on. I know the school board's done some of that. Budget committee, I sent you an email earlier today that was similar to that, and hopefully you responded. You got it. If you didn't, let me know, and that was an error on my part, and I can correct that. But I know we're kind of presenting this, so questions are probably formulating. You may not have 100%. Feel free to fill out that sheet, particularly as we have meetings here over the next couple of weeks. And we can come back with answers for meetings or lead a discussion around that and make this kind of approach to kind of help everyone out understand. Happy to answer any questions. It's part of our job, just to answer those questions.
Actually, a quick question.
Yeah.
I noticed in the cohorts for the enrollment, there's actually a drop from kindergarten to first grade this year. I don't think I've ever seen that. Do we know the reason behind that?
I don't, but we can look into it and see if we can find out some specific reasons. Yeah, that's usually not a traditional place where we see a drop, so, maybe we can kind of figure out what that is.
I actually have an answer. Last year, I speculated it has something to do with just the housing market. We had an awful lot of multi-generational temporary housing going on, so I think a lot of families took advantage of the profit they could make off of their house, and weren't immediately able to swap into a new housing. So they were living with grandparents, living with aunts and uncles, and then they established housing and they moved. So we had I don't want to use the word transient, but you had a small population that was in flux, and it seemed to be targeted to that K-1.
All right. With that, we'll transition over to Mr. Mitchell.
Yep.
For the EMS presentation.
Excellent. So, just talk about my budget. I'm going to talk about my budget a little bit, and then actually, in order to talk about my budget, I'm actually going to talk about a couple of other people's budgets too, so it all makes sense. So, the budget for GMS, 80% of it, the formula, which is just number of kids times rate. And so you'll see an awful lot of decreases in there because we're seeing a slight decrease in population. Not a huge one, but a small decrease. And when you multiply that by just a standard 3% increase among everything, there's enough of a drop to make for small decreases. You will see that the budget is overall over, and I've made it real easy for you because it's all there on page 1, smack dab in the center. Because it is really just all in furnishings and equipment. I will say that, yes, some of this is the reality of the failed bond vote. Not in retaliation for that, but just simply, we now have to stay with this building for a little bit longer. And so you'll see that we've been living without things like adequate storage in some rooms, so we're gonna replace that by adding 3. We have in one of our special education rooms where you kind of need to divide the room up so you can have small spaces. We've added a room divider system that, if you see it, and I'll show it to you, it's lived beyond its life, and so we kind of need to replace that. The other thing is, this is my 5th year in an elementary school, and not once have I purchased classroom carpets, and we love our little ones, but 5 years is too long for classroom carpets that they sit on every single day. So what I've introduced is an annual systematic changeover of those carpets. So basically we're going to start it this year, and then every year you're just going to see 5 new classroom rugs kind of go in. So that after this year, it will be steady. So, and I know last year, I'm going to try it again, I put in 2 classrooms of the student desks and chairs, and this year I was able to find a more affordable desk and chair, so maybe I'll get the 2 this year. I don't know, but I'm gonna keep on trying. The rest of it is down. Now I want to explain a few things that actually impact other people's budgets that are not in mine, but I'm gonna take the hit for it. So you'll notice that on the screen we talk about cost of established programs and resources. Some are placeholders. Now in the budget process, things have kind of been worked out, so you're gonna see in Dr. Taylor's budget things like programs like Discovery Ed, Mystery Science, Mystery Writing, and Kakori. And now, up until now, those have been funded by either grants or state funding. We feel confident that we're going to find grants and the state, but for instance, Discovery Ed has been a state ESSER funded for the whole state. That expired. We're confident that it will, but on this day and time, they haven't yet. And it's a vital program, so we're accounting for it here today. Again, it's in Sarah Taylor's. The other one, and I'm gonna bring it up only because it always becomes at some point during this process a point of conversation. My conference line is lower than Jake and Jen's, and that is solely because I somehow got myself elected onto the board of the New Hampshire School Principals Association, and that comes with a free annual conference. So,
I voted for you too, so you can get ours deducted too.
so they're not greedier than I'm just more of a sucker than they are. So I think that kind of explains everything in my budget. Like I said, it's pretty simple and it's just basic multiplication and arithmetic. So I will open it up to any questions.
But before you do that, can I just add, I think it's important to point out, I'm glad you did. We did do some, I would say consolidating of lines, trying to put tech stuff, either if it's educational instructional based under Dr. Taylor, or if it's like use within the school building under Chris, it's easier for us to keep track of. I know this is budget, but I'm gonna mention this. I am so paranoid about what happened to Hudson and to Nashua about their data security. So we can get a stronger handle of where our web-based tools are, and by having point people, that would be Dr. Taylor and Chris, to make sure they're all FERPA compliant, that they're all in their little data security ways correct and following the state law and everything. So that's a tweak we did in the budget process to help us make sure that we're managing everything a little bit better. So you're gonna see a little increases potentially in their lines, but the decreases in the school lines for those type of things.
And also, you remember, if you'll remember last year, every year prior to that, kindergarten stood out as its own kind of sub-budget, and we just decided that didn't need to happen anymore, so we incorporated it to where it naturally fit. I think last year we got like 85–90% of reincorporation, and then this year I think we've kind of established, so like little things like their scholastic readers were kind of hanging out there, so I've now taken it out. So you'll see a couple of corrections that have to do with just putting kindergarten where it belongs, just in part of the general fund. So, any questions? Brian, yeah, we're still buying recorders. Check that one off. Yes, they still use them.
So the question I have is for you, but it's also for the other two schools and probably for the, not so much the SEU, but all the time that I was on the school board, we talked about going less and less paper. Yet throughout all three of the schools, you look at leases for copiers and, for toners, and just, it keeps going up. And for the 9 years I was on the school board, we kept talking about less and less paper. Yet it's costing more and more.
Can I chime in on that one?
Go right ahead.
I think part of what we're seeing is shifting to all tech is not helping our students to be effective. So we're kind of trying to balance the two. We know that we need to teach them to be digital citizens and use their Chromebooks and laptops to do a lot of things, but it doesn't work for everything, and we're trying to help improve the learning that's happening by taking it back a little old school, and that does involve more paper and pencil.
And ink.
And ink.
Yeah.
I love that. I actually don't allow computers in my classroom. I'm all paper, pencil, and so I think it's amazing. I love it. No, I think that so I love the idea that we're going back to the way it is. Because kids are getting distracted. Kids are getting caught on websites they shouldn't be. So I think it's. I have no problem reading that line.
Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
So carpet replacement, first and foremost, we're talking.
Rug replacement, not
Area
carpet.
rugs.
Area
It says
rugs.
carpet, I just want to clarify, we are not carpeting,
I'm sorry, yes, they are area rugs,
just
yes.
making sure.
Yep.
I had a question.
Yeah,
on that.
$540 would have been an amazing price for it.
I had a question on that one because you mentioned doing 5 classrooms a year.
This is my other question.
Yeah. What is the life cycle of it? Like, how long is this rug going on?
So basically 5 per year, I'm accounting for 1 grade level a year, so then you're on a 5-year cycle. So this year targeted, it would be first grade. And I'd probably go, okay.
So my only other question then is, you said that they're in pretty rough shape, so there's 1 grade level that's not gonna get carpets or rugs for 5 years from now. Is there a grade level that's like, that they can last another 5 years?
The bigger kids. Bigger kids.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Just making sure,
Yeah.
Because.
K1, definitely, we will assess them too. While I say this is a systematic, I'm not locking myself into, unlike Chromebooks and computers where it's like the worst 20 every 5 years, this is more just like, all right, first grade's pretty rough. And also you have to remember the rugs that we have now, not only can I say that they haven't been used in 5 years, I can't tell you how long they were used before that. And for about a year, they were like wound up and thrown in the 30s building and then brought back out. So they're just, it's time.
But again, if this is like a true priority, right, this is a great conversation to have for encumbrances, right? Once we get to that point, and if there's monies left, right, we can talk about it then,
Yeah.
right?
I thought to be responsible, 5 a year. At the end of the year, if you want to give me 5 more, I'm not going to say no. Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
All right, Ms. Grantham.
So, our budget, as Dan talked about, you'll see a lot of those shifts of things that have moved off of our lines, either onto the SAU budget or onto Dr. Taylor or Mr. Jamrog's lines. We do have a couple of decreases, and the first decrease we have is a decrease in the world language budget to reflect the one class of Spanish that we currently have at LMS. It is also a decrease in counseling, repairs, and maintenance, and you'll see that later on in the budget on the increase, so I guess it's kind of a counteract one another, but,
So, just to be clear, is that counseling, comma, repairs, comma, and maintenance?
no, counseling dash repairs and maintenance. So in the counseling budget, we had a repairs and maintenance for the FM systems because we only had one in the building that was requiring, as we were shuffling it from class to class to be utilized, it was requiring a lot of repair and maintenance. Because of the practice that Dan put in place at GMS to outfit all classrooms, at GMS we have a lot of kids that are coming up to the middle school with FM systems in their IEPs and 504s. So rather than buy 5 for 5th grade this year, and then shift those 5 to 6th grade this year, and then buy it just makes sense to me to buy for each of the grade levels and leave them where they are. When those kids move through, the new kids come up and they're already there and ready for them. So that's later on in the line. So we don't have to do the repairing as much right now because we're replacing them with new devices and new systems as we're going through it, as that's one of the proposed budget increases that we have. There's an overall supply line increase, again, going back to the old school paper and pencil. The student agendas were cut out of our budget prior to my arrival, where we have taken 5th and 6th grade Chromebooks and put them on carts, and we heard that it was really difficult for kids, and kids are demonstrating a difficulty in executive functioning. We feel as though that's a really important place to add back to teach kids how to organize themselves and how to know when things are due. And yes, there are technology components to do that, but going back to Carrie's point, kids use technology almost a little bit too much, where they're not using it for the right purposes. We want to train them to use it for the right purposes, but we really feel like those agendas are an important addition to add back. We added it back in 5th and 6th grade this year by kind of big borrowing and stealing in that bottom line idea, but we're looking to add it back to 5 through 8 for next year because we're seeing it make a big difference. As I discussed last year, we had 2 classrooms of desks and tables, and it wasn't just wanting pretty furniture, it was literally broken desks or legs that are bent out with wings. If you have those desk chair combinations that have been there since, I'm gonna guess, the 80s at some point, because they are on their last leg, literally and figuratively in some cases. Our Mr. McGivergan is fabulous at Frankensteining a table together, but I'm concerned that it's gonna become a danger for someone sitting on it or falling on it, and middle schoolers, we just know how they roll. So we'd like to just have safe and established tables. We have that been on a 2 classrooms a year cycle. We'd like to continue with that, as well as replacing some art tables that have been Frankensteined together and have broken, chipped things that kids are getting splinters and caught on. And the second year in a 2-year cycle for replacing science lab stools, which we replaced 10 last year. And again, I have pictures to show you of the broken, chipped edges that are sharp for kids to sit on. The clamoring that I've heard since I've come to Litchfield is, why doesn't middle school have recess? Because we don't have a playground and we don't have anything for the kids to do outside. And we're trying to get that physical movement break back into the middle school, finding an opportunity for kids to get outside. Right now, what does it look like? It looks like kids going for a walk with teachers, maybe playing a game on the field. But one of the things we're hoping to do next year is add a physical education line that also places a new outdoor sturdy basketball hoop that our kids will be able to use during an outdoor activity time. We didn't want to get just the, backyard hoop that's $190 that you get for your kids at Christmas. We wanted something that's going to be able to be installed and sturdy to be able to handle the wear and tear that middle schoolers will put on it, as will community kids when they're coming out to play after school or on the weekends. We did also have a change to our fax line to support the sustainability class that was approved this year for the Unified Art that we replaced. That sustainability class has been a really excellent add to our program. It fits right in with our net zero, I hate to say the word, solar panels that are on the roof and beautiful and will be hooked up and ready to go very shortly. But they are, the kids are learning all about is sustainable farming, and that ties in perfectly with the history of Litchfield. And one of the things that we've worked in collaboration with Ms. Crowley is there are some really cool hydroponic gardens that our kids can grow vegetables that we can turn over to our, here's your farm to table, Carrie. From our farm in school to the kids' table, they'll be able to eat. It can produce lettuce. I think it's
25 pounds every 28 days.
So growing lettuce that can turn back over to
A lot of
the,
lettuce.
yeah, it's a lot of lettuce.
Just did a quick math. It's a lot of lettuce.
Yep.
Salads.
A lot of salads.
Wrap station at the high school.
It does herbs and other, you
Yep.
can do strawberries and other things like that. It's
Yep.
a really, really cool program.
And it's all hydroponics, which is like if you think about Disneyland, driving through the land, they would have that in there and be able to utilize it and learn from it. So it's a cool opportunity that ties into feeding back to our budget and our system, and the kids are learning while it's happening. We just think that's a great
I guess
potential.
one question I'd have on that is, are we gonna have concerns from parents about the water?
No, there's a special
It's a
filtration system
filtration
built
system.
into the whole
Oh,
system.
I'm sure you're aware of the history and what's going on with the water in Litchfield. So I
Mhm.
wanna
Yeah.
make sure that we have that covered.
Yeah.
So parents are like, oh, that's awesome, we're not eating it. So,
PFAs.
just make sure that that's covered, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a whole
There's a whole,
filtration system.
Okay.
It is hydration
Yes,
technically. Built into this, it's Fork Farms, if anyone wants to look it up, they're fantastic. And the guy who does it has a whole,
Okay.
he knows his stuff.
so when we added the sustainability class, Lauren had just come back from a workshop and it was like symbiosis. It's just coming together and going, hey, this would be a really cool way to have something that our kids can participate in the history of Litchfield, have that opportunity to farm, and in a new and innovative way. We have also an increase in the music education line, and that is to replace a very ancient piano that is being utilized in our chorus classroom. That ancient piano is off by half, almost a quarter to a half tone. I had to write that down with from Carolyn today to make sure that I was sharing the right
That's not good.
information. If we want our kids to be able to be musicians and carry a tune, we might want them to be able to hear the right note when they're trying to sing or play things. So this increase in the budget line is to replace that. The piano itself is, I'm gonna say, I think I looked at the bottom of it, was like 1994 was the last time we replaced this piano, so it's ready. It's worth it, and it's good for our kids. And then I already previously discussed the FM systems. This will be year 2 out of 4 to mimic the best practice that's been happening down at GMS, and we'll have 2 more grade levels to outfit, and we'll be finished with that. It's a sizable cost, but I think it's a best practice and good for our kids.
On the hydroponic system?
Yes.
The 5,000 gets you obviously set up and going this year.
Yep.
What would it cost me next year for seeds and whatever you need?
It's far less. I think it's $250 for the seed kits and seed packs, so it's significantly less.
And to jump onto that, you can even go, you don't have to necessarily purchase it through Fork Farms either. He sets you up with everything.
Yes.
But you can go on Amazon or wherever, and if you find something cheaper, it'll still work.
I've even seen with the farms itself to be able to recycle, talk about reduce, reuse, recycle, to use things like the K-cups and put you dump out the grounds and you can use the K-cups to plant like 99-cent Walmart seeds if you wanted to go down there and go down that road.
Do we go through enough K-tips?
Do we go through enough K-Cups? Holy smokes, we should see the collection we have right now.
The hydroponic farm.
We're recycling them.
What are you budgeting for the piano?
The piano itself,
3,700.
3,700.
It's a digital?
It's a digital
It's a
piano.
digital?
Yep.
Very good.
There's a model number if you need it, but I have to flip to that page.
CLP 835.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the guitars? Are those
Yes.
used by students?
They are used by
Oh,
students.
I didn't realize.
So we have, right now in our curriculum, we have 3 general music classes. There's a
Oh,
5th
okay.
grade music class that does keyboards. Our 7th grade music class does ukuleles and guitars. And our 8th grade music class does history of rock and roll,
Nice.
going through the decades. 8th graders love their music class.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just for clarification on co-curricular 610 supplies. Page 5.
Yes.
First line says supplies for clubs, cost increase. Is there actually a cost increase because of the budget's exact same thing as last year?
The cost increase was from the previous year. Thank you for catching that. I missed that edit. We did have a referee increase as well, so you'll see that in the,
That's from lacrosse, correct?
it's from lacrosse as well as the individual.
Right, but most of it's lacrosse. It's the first year that,
No, this year is the first year of the budget for lacrosse. This is the first.
this is?
Yep.
Right.
The bigger increase is, it went from 75 to 100 per ref. And that's an agreement with Tri-County.
Jen, is robotics the only co-curricular that you have a budget for?
It is, the rest are self-funded,
So
just
drama and,
drama and
Art club
and all of those things have been self-funded, or, like our Crusaders Club, there's a fee to participate, and they get all their supplies through the fee that they use to enter that Crusaders Club.
okay, thank you.
What other questions do we have for Principal Bradley?
Building off Tina's question, does robotics do any fundraising?
Do they do any fundraising? Not to my knowledge, because they're always really busy leading up to competitions. They haven't, they're right now meeting 4 to 5 days a week after schools to get their competitions ready to go. Their first competition is next weekend. So I don't believe they do any fundraising at this time.
Do you know if they've explored any business partnerships to help support?
I know that when Mrs. Corbeil was the coordinator, she had sought several grants, that we still have a small grant pool, I believe, and Julie isn't here to ask the question, but there's a small grant pool left from a Coder Z budget that she had, or grant that she had at one point. It's not close to the number that we have here, but there's a little bit left there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other updates this evening?
Move on to Jake with one.
Yeah,
High school.
Over Principal West?
High school's up, right around $50,000. We have some increases that we can't really control. Our NHIAA dues went up in athletics, so there's an increase there. Our contract for our athletic trainer is also going up. Our transportation for athletics, co-curriculars, that's tied to the contract as well. Our CTE numbers, obviously, we have to budget for that, and there's the increase in that. Many of our departments' budgets are actually down. We did a really nice job sitting down and having conversations about, what we really need moving forward. So we really sat down and took a look at that. We're looking to replace some pretty old furniture that's used pretty often in the library. And then you'll notice that the furniture line in the regular ed, I raised that from 10,000 to 12. Classroom furniture, collaborative adaptive furniture is expensive. I was able to do like 1.5 classrooms this year. And we're really looking to do 2 classrooms a year, as many of the desks and chairs at CHS are original to the 2000 opening. So just looking to be able to use some more collaborative furniture in the space as we make this shift, to more collaborative hands-on learning within classroom spaces. So that's kind of what the high school budget looks like in a nutshell.
Pretty straightforward. Any questions for Principal Hess?
Can you talk a little bit about CTE enrollment, what you're seeing for trends? Did it increase again this year?
No, I mean, we reduced it by 10. Again, we can ask for who's interested. We don't really know a number until March, so this is a really hard budget number for us to look at, but we did reduce it by 10 going into next year, and then we're, at the whim for what CT centers are gonna charge us for that, so.
So we have 82 students attending CTE right now?
I think we have 72 and we're budgeting for 62 next year.
We have 62 going right now, so that 72 is from the prior year that was budgeted for 72 students. This year's number is based on 62, which is our current enrollment.
All right, unless this is old.
I know it's a confusing line, it says, it
says 72.
descriptive. Yeah, and then there's a reduction under it of 10.
Backs it out right below it.
Yeah. And we tried this year to utilize this actual tuition rate that Alvern charges, rather than just like a rough estimate of what CTE is. So I think there's like a number, that is the tuition that Alvern charges or something like that.
So the tuition, so we're going down 10 students, but it's going up 23,000?
Yeah, because to be honest, like it's budgeted for 60,000 this year, and I don't know where that 60,000, like how we got to 60,000 for 72 students. That makes no sense. So we asked the actual tuition rate for it. We didn't ask. We have it because we pay the bill from Alvern, and that's what it is, and we go from there. So
It shows this year we're budgeted for 98.
there was a 60 somewhere. I'm gonna open my book.
That was 24.
56 or 24.
Yeah.
Let me look.
Yeah, so it's a 22.
Yeah, with 10 people less.
They budgeted a 5% tuition increase, which is, but that's still. What's the actual spend on that account this year? Do we know that?
I can get it for you.
Okay.
How many different CTE programs are there?
A lot.
Yeah.
I can't tell you off the top of my head how many Alvern offers, but between Alvern and we do have, I think, 5 to 7 kids that attend Pinkerton as well. So there's quite a,
He says at least 30, so.
yeah.
I think we budgeted
Ballpark.
56.
Pinkerton has 37.
Jake, is that 1,800 like an average cost? Like, do you take the
That's
cost of
that-
Pinkerton?
That's just the Alvern cost. Again, I think we have 7 kids that go to Pinkerton this year. So we don't do transportation to Pinkerton, so if you're gonna do that, you have to transport yourself. So we don't have as many kids go to Pinkerton, but we just use that Alvern cost line.
Okay.
On page 4, on line 738, replacement cycle year 1 and 3 for helmets for workforce. The look at the budget last year, we're looking at budget again this year. So is it year 1 of 3 or are we in year 2 of 3?
Next year will be year 2 of 3.
Alright.
I think we have to make a decision on whether or not we want to keep doing the ropes course.
Ah.
So, like.
That's such an interesting conversation to have. Go ahead.
It is, yeah, so me and Julie met with a couple people from the rec commission.
Okay, good.
Last week or the week before, it's all blended
These
together.
are like not us, but we want you to keep it. So go ahead.
So that was kind of the conversation, we went to them, it was like, do you guys want it? And they were like, do you want it? And then we walked the course, and no one really came to any conclusion on that walking the course, and
Get a lot of use.
no, not right
So,
now.
it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Some people will say that yes, it does get used. Others will say it would get used more often if only we had people that is needed to help us run it. So it's one of those, yes, it's nice to look at, it's great to say we have it, but whether anybody's qualified to use it, I don't know.
Didn't we have outside groups that used it
I
last year?
think so, but there were, I don't know who they coordinate with, and there's
Right.
questions about insurance, and
It-
some
it-
people say
Who's
cut it
liable
down,
for
the
that,
liability
school
goes
or the
away,
town?
but then if you do that, you're gonna tick off a good number of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna play both sides here for
So
a
there's pros
second.
and cons, obviously.
Yeah, so, the previous district I was at, we had a rope course, but it was on school property. So it was a little different from a management standpoint. We had control over it completely. It's complete. We could take stuff down when it wasn't in use. Like, we felt confident about, like, the liability that was put on us by having that type of course. When, I got here and learned that the ropes course is not on school property, it's on town property, it naturally made me a little nervous of like, well, what happens if someone's on that, we're not even aware who's on it, it's not our property, how are we supposed to
Right.
manage that? And it sounds like that's something that's been worked on through the town and the school for a long, long time. Sounds like the history of it is COVID came and obviously limited a lot of stuff, and I believe there was a teacher, Coach K, who's very passionate about it, who was here at Litchfield, and I am pro, like, this educational, again, the high school I was at previously, we have ropes course units, and it's involved in the curriculum stuff a lot. I'm not disparaging the value of it, but we do need to make a decision, either we're in or we're out. Obviously, Coach K is not here anymore. One of the new PE teachers is willing to get trained and has done some initial training related to it. I wouldn't call it a passion of that teacher's, he's not, he'll do it if we ask him to, but it's not something he himself is super passionate about, but he's a good teacher, he'll do what's right for kids. So we need to make a decision, and I'm hoping we can do that through the budget process. So I was hoping someone would ask about that line so we could have this discussion on what we want to do. The sense I got from the people from the rec commission, and they put some excellent effort into it and clearing out the space underneath it and everything and prepping it. But I don't know if they also were 100% own it too. So I think.
Well, I think the thing is, rec commission has no money, so they're like, well, we can't maintain it in the school. Well, it came from the school originally.
Yeah.
Therefore, last man standing. So it's a matter of, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do think related to this cost and related to the ropes course stuff in here, if we elect not to keep it, there is going to be some costs associated with taking it down, right? Like, we're going to have to bring in a couple crane, type of lift things to get in there and take some of the pieces down and stuff like that. So we've left the costs in there relevant to this decision of what direction we're going into, one way or the other. Either we got to actually replace some of the units or some of the pieces there as part of it, or we got to utilize that money to take it down and move beyond it. So now's the time to decide. Again, this is like the transition year. We got new people, either we're in or out on it, and we got to make a decision. If that decision is put on us from a school, I think if I was to say right now, we're leaning to not move forward with it,
From your perspective, makes it how you can't see if anybody's on it.
I'd be concerned about the liability more than
Absolutely,
anything.
from a liability
Yeah.
standpoint, like
Yeah.
if somebody, there's no way for you to know if somebody drives in from another town,
Yeah.
parks herself, and climbs, scales it, and does their thing.
Yeah.
How do you know?
It scares me a lot that scenario could happen, and then the town ultimately too is responsible for it. Now, it was sort of explained to me in like very, very rough like ways. We're responsible for the sky, the school district, and the town is responsible for the ground. So depending on where something was to occur. But if they slip off a piece that's up in the air, like, then we're on the hook for it. But that still makes me a little like queasy about like who.
I
It
think
sounds like we're in trouble.
ultimately the decision is, I think it needs to come down, right? And we're gonna need money in the budget to be able to do that.
Unless
Do we
rec
want
wants
to do
to
that?
take it on.
Right, I think we have to
Or
finish
do
that
we ask
conversation
the
with rec.
voters, do we give this to the town, or do we just,
And I think that's the conversation we need to have with Brett.
We've
Like,
talked
it's
about
one of
that for
those,
a few
I'm not
years.
sure, I don't know how many people in town actually use it and have a passion for it, so maybe there
I've never
would-
seen anybody run that course in like 25
I
years.
always
actually have.
thought you couldn't use it without permission.
Right.
Just like in the general public.
Right.
If we only do people on the rec commission.
No, no idea.
But I have
I'm on
seen
it.
like groups come in, I remember being at an event and seeing people down in the corner with the gear, so I know it has gotten used in the town of
Yeah.
town.
Yep.
But I don't know how widespread, I don't know whose toes get stepped on if we take it down without asking, So, I don't, so
Well, that's
it's
why
a
we
very, it's a good conversation,
Yeah.
and it's, I can understand why the school would not want to maintain ownership of it. But then, yes, the question is, does the town take it?
So let's do this, let's keep the money in the budget for now and allow me the opportunity to send an email to the rec commission and start the conversation.
Oh, they start saying, back in the like, we don't want it anymore, not it.
Mr. Cutter, I would include Ms. Kleiner on that because she's gonna be highly sensitive to the liability side of it.
Yep, perfect.
Maybe she'll make the decision. Take it out!
Yeah.
Can I offer one more suggestion? So my 2.4 years at Campbell High School, I've learned that tradition is pretty strong and important. I feel like Coach K should probably be involved in this conversation. He is still very passionate about the ropes course. And again, I don't know whose decision it is at the end of the day. If you ask me, like,
Maybe
we're
we can
out.
get him to join the rec commission and he
But,
can help
like,
him take
there
it
you go.
over.
But I guess he lives in Florida
He
now?
moved.
Oh.
Yeah, for like half of the year he lives in Florida, but like,
Snowbird.
I was saying something against Mr. Steers.
they were just over there today, like, with a group. Like, they text me like, hey, you wanna swing by? Like, they're still trying to like rope me into this thing.
Swing by.
I see what you did there.
So I think if this conversation's gonna happen, like, just, maybe even just like as like a, hey, just a heads up before you hear, if he's watching this board meeting right now, I just think that might be like a branch that could go a long way. Alright. Well, thank you for your questions, guys, I appreciate it.
I have a few more for you.
You're not done yet.
An additional pottery wheel?
Yeah, so our ceramics classes average 18 students. We have 2 pottery wheels. So it's just the opportunity for more kids concurrently to work at once.
And I can't believe that there's more furniture for the library in here.
Our old couches, the couches are 8 years old, and they are showing every bit of their wear and tear.
And the athletic trainer services are going up that much.
The estimation is by 2030, they'll be at 60 grand a year.
So, well, that would be an interesting conversation for the athletics department then, won't it?
That's a
We
contract.
want to
Yes.
revisit this conversation in personnel, because we think there might be a more cost-efficient way if
Oh,
we.
I have an idea where you're going, I'm going a different route.
But in terms of athletic training services, providing that to our athletes, we think there might be a more long-term, cost-efficient way. So when we talk about personnel, we're gonna mention something related to them.
Any other questions for Principal Hess?
I will say, if you look at the counseling line, I don't know what page that's on off the top of my head. Page 18. We have currently budgeted, that top line, 644. There's currently, $1,800 for a new college and career readiness program. That's gonna come out, I think it just missed the final cut. There's actually a program called Zello that the state is gonna offer free for 3 years. We've done some, conversations around that. We did a couple webinars about it. I think it's gonna serve us pretty well. So that 1,800 will come out of there as well, so. We just missed our final cut before print.
It's the new research database for library.
We're sharing it with LMS. I can't remember, it's EBSCO, if that's the one we're doing, that we're sharing halvesies with LMS.
Is that in your budget or LMS's budget?
We split it.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
750 of it, I think, in my library budget.
Oh, I see it.
What's that, World
It's at the
Book?
top of this other page, it got cut, I see
Yeah.
it. 715, yeah.
Where is that? I don't see that.
To the top of page 21.
21.
Yeah. It's
The
kind of
library
cut-
services, 644.
cut off from the other section a little bit.
715, yeah.
And just as a follow-up to that, like, I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 databases for library, like, is there, what sort of overlap exists there?
A lot of them specialize. I'm sure there is some overlap, but a lot of them do specialize in certain content areas when you're doing research. It's been a while since I was in college. JSTOR was the big one that I used when I was in college, and that's specialized on the humanities side of things. So I know they differ in each database.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, I just wanted to follow up on that question about the furniture. Are we looking at the couches only, or is it the tables and chairs? What's involved
The
in that?
request was to replace the couches.
Okay.
And not do couches again, but do chairs, other seating.
Okay.
So kids have a spot to be in there, not necessarily on a beat-up old couch.
Have we considered reaching out to the community? Because I feel like I see frequently offers of, hey, remodeling, have this couch. Like, have we reached out to see if anybody has one, maybe?
We would worry, we'd have to worry about, are they fire rated for schools and that sort of thing. I'd also, personally, I don't want a hodgepodge of used furniture in a library. That's just me.
That's great, but we're looking at a $2 million increase. So we gotta see what we can do.
It's one point.
Household furnishings are not allowed to be in public schools in regards,
So long as
fire
it's-
inspection.
So long as it's fire rated, you could, and there's nothing saying that you couldn't ask. I just, to me, in a community like this, it doesn't hurt to ask.
But he just said he doesn't want couches.
I don't care, but then why are we buying a couch?
We're not, we're
not.
getting rid of
Chairs.
couches to
Replace
move
with
towards
regular furniture.
different, yes.
Sounds like a great fundraising opportunity. Go ahead.
Any other questions for Principal Hicks?
Thanks, folks.
All right. All right, we're gonna move over to Holly for HR and then personnel. All right.
All right, human resources, increase of $1,151. Last year we moved, software. This stuff is not in the technology budget. We kept this one in the human resources budget for our applicant software, our training software, and our timekeeping system. So we put a 3% increase for that, $459. Other things, you see a little bit of an increase in our background checks for volunteers. Right now, that is $22.50. If we process online through the states, $25 a person, we pay for those. Miscellaneous expenses increased by $500 for ADA accommodations, badge supplies, and dues for NHSA, which is based on my salary. Our FSA company, we moved to a new company this year, not very favorable by many people. I had less people enroll in it, so budgeted more with what we have currently for this year. That's HR.
Then we're gonna jump into
The big
personnel.
one.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I brought cupcakes for everyone. Salaries and benefits. So this slide is just, you'll see some spreadsheets in here too, again, that we can share with everyone. But just, Brian talked a lot about this already in his overview. So things that you're gonna see when you go through this budget, 393,089 brought back from cuts last year. Our health insurance rate came in, so we have actual rates, 12.4% increase in health insurance, which is roughly $346,257. 5% for dental insurance. Second year of the CBA for the teachers. Non-union raises, you'll see as we get down a little further, changes in positions, and then the reduction there were those vacant, not IEP para positions that we've had in the budget that we're looking to reduce. So, again, Brian talked a lot about the salaries, support staff, you can switch slides, sorry. Support staff, we will end up with a warrant for that, for a new contract for them for next year. So currently in this budget, you're gonna see their FY25 salaries. Again, teachers, second year of the contract, that was 4.5% added to their salary grade and roughly 3.5% per step. Non-union staff, we budgeted a little different this year. Again, we talk about transitions with staff. Brian and I talked about, instead of a salary pool that we had and a bonus pool last year, putting a straight percentage on our non-union staff line. Non-union staff is anyone, obviously, that's not part of the union. You're looking at the people here at this table, our other SAU employees, tutors, school psychologists, mental health clinicians, social workers, anybody else that's not.
So it's a flat rate regardless of just 4%, everybody's 4%?
Yes. Other contractual things, mostly on page 1 of the budget. So Brian talked about grade changes, so I reach out to staff now in making the budget process, hey, anyone looking next year where they may move track changes, let me know. And just everyone that responded back, that's where that number comes from. 6 periods, so our teachers in their contract can teach so many classes per day. If we say, hey, you wanna teach this one too, they get paid extra for that, so we budgeted that based on what we're actually doing this year. Other things such as longevity, for administrator contracts and teacher contracts, vacation buyback we have in our administrator contract, prescription reimbursement, which is in the LEA contract. Severance, we are actually seeing for the first time with our trust fund, something really cool that we only have about $5,000 budgeted in for severance this year
Man, that was
instead
a good idea.
of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is also because I didn't have any new people say they wanted to retire at the end of the year, so it's been,
Thanks to our cultural, right?
exactly.
Environment.
Yeah, so 2 staff members that previously, so it carried over, so at the end of the last fiscal year, that was about 98,000 was transferred to that trust fund. So all you see in the budget this year is the difference. If they were to retire, what additional cost would it be? So that I think is kind of nice to actually see.
And Ms. I was just on your point on the non-union staff, and
Yeah.
that's not the question, right? The board has not talked about this.
No, I just want to
Yeah.
understand it, because rarely
Yeah.
do you see everybody get the same amount, no matter.
Oh, that's how it's
No holds barred.
always been in every district I've worked in.
That's fantastic. Some of us philosophically may have a problem with that, so we can have that debate.
All right, next slide. Benefits, again, just kind of broken down the big pictures. Health insurance, we also have in both our admin contracts and our teacher contracts, staff that do not take our health insurance get a buyout. So we have budgeted again on actuals that we have this year with teachers around 49,500, non-union at 12,200. Again, that health reimbursement account that's in our teacher contract, our 5% dental increase. Life and disability, I have, those rates were frozen, but there's increases that I put at the bottom of the budget because they still, they're based on salaries, so that part increases, but our rates didn't. New Hampshire retirement system, very nice of them for the next 2 years, our rates are going down. For a teacher, we pay 19.64% this year, they're going down to 19.23%. Our employee group, we are currently at 13.53% and they're going down to 12.5%. Those are 2-year rates, rate locks, so we'll see that with them for the next 2 years. And obviously things you'll see increases in, taxes. Again, we talked about long-term disability because that's all based a calculation off of someone's salary. And the funnest part, okay.
Want me to click on this?
Yes, please. So this you saw on your first sheet, so we should probably go to our second tab, positions. Again, we can share this, like, shut the slide, show it to you guys. So you can have it. So up in the top category, there are 4 positions you are gonna see that are in this salary and benefits budget that you have in front of you. Again, that one paraprofessional that we said we were originally cutting 11, that is in here. But one is moving, one of those 11 is moving to CHS. So when you go through the budget, you'll see an addition of one paraprofessional position there. And then we have added a gymnastics coach. This year at the high school, we met the number for where you actually had to have your own team in gymnastics. We've been partnering, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Londonderry, we've been independents
Yeah.
practicing with Londonderry. This year, we had enough girls that we actually have to have a coach. We didn't have a stipend for said coach.
So that is in there. Esports, Brian, would you like to talk about esports?
Yes, so esports is an emerging part of the NHIA. It's introduced this year. People are laughing because the joke is I'm the commissioner of esports. Because I, as a principal, I was the chair of the esports committee for the NHIA. because I was the sucker who, when they were saying, hey, we need someone to volunteer on this, like, yeah, if you need someone, let me know. Well, you're the only principal who said you're even willing to serve. So not only are you serving, you are the chair of the committee. Have fun. So
what is that?
what is esports?
Yeah.
So they play Rocket League in the fall, and then they play Super Smash Brothers into winter, and it's competitive esports. You know, playing video games and stuff like that. We play it.
The college scholarship.
You can get a
thing
scholarship to
for
SNU on it.
This
esports now.
is
Sure,
legit.
but those are the things I keep cracking down on in my classroom, like fantastic.
Yeah, but it is.
know this.
It is an
Every college has a
official
room.
NHIA sport this year. We rewarded state championships last year in it. There is a state championship season going on right now for the fall
So this is
season.
a new sport that we have now that apparently hasn't gone through the 3-year self-funded that somehow works without ever asking anybody. We have lacrosse added apparently because it survived 3 years. Where's the 3 years on that one?
Are we required to have it?
Are we not required? No, but I am the chair of the committee, so.
And you don't have to be the bad guy.
And, yeah, that's fine, just so, but like.
But I fought for it, but the mean budget committee.
So it is something that we would like to pursue, the esports.
That sounds like a
Part of it.
great.
Does the CBA require
After-
a certain amount of stipends anyway?
There is a certain
Yeah.
requirement, in there, so,
Contractual.
Right.
yeah.
These are not.
Now, these are above
CBA.
that.
They're above that,
Yeah,
okay.
CBA kind of agreement. So we did put esports in there. I kid a little bit, but I do think it reaches a population of kids that traditional athletics don't, you know. SNU legitimately doles out hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships. They have a whole esports arena. That's where the state
There's a
championships
whole
are.
major in college around it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I don't wanna pay for it, but I get it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have a conversation, and right off the bat here, it hasn't even gone through somehow we got to some agreement that 3 years self-supporting somehow magically lets it appear in the budget. We're not there on this one.
Yeah. I will admit, I did not know that 3-year self-funding thing. So.
I don't know where it came from, and I think it's, yeah. We can at least say this one doesn't need it. Lacrosse will have that conversation.
The last thing that was added into the budget in front of you is an art club coordinator at GMS. Then the
And
next.
to speak to Ms.
Yes.
Douglas' point, it's a return of the art club coordinator, which is, it's been a vacant position. It had been a quiet club, and it has returned now, so it has had many years, and now it's coming back, and it's active this year on unfunded or self-funded status. So next year, we'd like to find out.
So part of the.
I like self-funded, so we'll have a conversation.
Part of the teacher, CBA, there's rules for adding clubs and co-curriculars and extra stuff like that. When it's, you know, if it's a negotiation year, we try to do it all through that. Otherwise, they have rules that you have to run it for a year or so, and then you can present it towards the board for the next year, and then it can be added to the contract the following year. So the next section you're gonna see is the paraprofessional positions that,
Can we not label it cut paras?
Yeah.
Can we just do like, do you mess with paraprofessional and a negative number? Cut paras just doesn't look good.
yeah, absolutely, we can change whatever we need. Then you're gonna get down a little further here, positions that the district thinks, would be really helpful for us, but they are not in the budget for you. These would be positions, for discussion going forward. We're looking at Campbell High School to increase our part-time school counselor to full-time. As part of that, we're looking to expand the role of our school counseling director to K-12. We've talked about many times in the past, which hasn't gone through the vote, through voters. It's been, shot down to help our special ed director who wears a million different hats. So if we could increase our part-time school counselor to full-time, that person could take on the caseload that our school counseling director has, and then our school counseling director could pick up some of the stuff. that our student service director could get rid of, such as homeschooling, 504s, truancies, McKinney-Vento.
So we currently have only a part-time counselor at the high school?
No, there is,
We have a full-time, a part-time, and then our director.
so the director has a caseload as well.
Gotcha.
Polly, can you zoom out just a little bit so we can see the whole?
Yeah,
the-
sorry, we should have shared this ahead.
Yeah, I can hide the middle.
I just-
couple.
Just give them the
I just
total.
need a total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. There.
Scroll back down. Yeah.
And those aren't in the budget, right?
They are
Correct,
not.
correct, these are not. in what's in front of
I mean, the athletic trainer one, based on what Mr. Hess said about that proposed cost, if you're looking at, I mean, obviously, a warrant article makes sense, but I think the logic behind that and the long-term cost savings, that's one I could get behind, definitely going to a warrant article. 'Cause
Yeah, so we're
That,
gonna
that has long-term cost savings associated with it.
Yeah, so there would be immediate, a little bit more of an increase. I think the proposed contract is 40,000, and we're proposing a salary with 45, but it's under the benefit level, so we wouldn't have to offer benefits for this position. And we would, right now the contract calls for about 20 hours a week on average. Obviously, that's a little flexible depending on any athletic needs in a given week. But we would be looking at this person closer to working 30 hours per week and giving us extra services beyond just those athletic training services. And these could be very convenient things, you know, they're our employee, and we could have this person sub for us, for example. We're always in need of subs. That could be something to come in and help us in the afternoon. I heard that ropes course joke over there. Help us just manage fields, help us with grounds as necessary, with all these other little things that come up related to athletics. It's just we get a little more bang for our buck if we were to kind of pursue this. And like Jake mentioned, our contract provider there for athletic trainings has told us it's going to be at least 60,000 in 2030. So as you kind of project that out, this demand is going up and up in athletic training. So there's a proposal to kind of bring it underneath our kind of umbrella and make it our employee.
Also at CHS, we are looking to pay 2 employees to do parking lot duty for 1 hour per day. Currently, we are paying employees to do that. We're kind of funding it through vacant positions due to safety needs, right? Anything else?
It's in the contract that anything outside of the contracted hours, which is 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after, and these people are there 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. They see every student walking in the building, and they're there for dismissal as well. It's in their contract that they need to be paid an X amount per hour, and we don't currently budget
Yeah.
for it.
This isn't a new position.
It's a new position, we've just been funding it.
It's like a
It's never been,
duty, really. So it talks about, in the teacher contract, it says if they do, doesn't it say directly if they're,
if that is their assigned duty and it's outside of the 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after, which this duty is if we're talking about safety, getting an eye on everyone coming in the building and out, getting the kids and the buses out on time, they have to be paid a certain amount per hour.
So these people will be in the parking lot, correct?
Correct.
So why don't we just take it from the parking?
Because that's not what the parking lot fund is.
That can be used for anything.
It can't, the
It has to be
description of
tied
it,
to
yeah.
students, directly to students.
And in the teacher's contract, this is supposed to be a budgeted thing, and it's currently not.
So what are you saying the money for the parking lot can be used for?
Has to be directly tied to student activities of some sort, because it's in a student activity fund. So you gotta tie it to a student use somehow. I don't know if a parking attendant would.
I don't recall that's the way it was set up to begin with.
That's how it's always, just,
What the
not trying
description is
to
current.
argue, that's how it's always been explained to me and as a high school principal and
I know
utilizing.
we talked
the
about
student activity
increasing
account.
it from when it was 25 to
Yeah.
100. Those monies would be used to do repairs if need be,
Yeah.
do restriping if need be.
Yeah.
Well, we
You can
did that
cycle some of
because-
that over, that's allowable,
Yes.
but in terms of paying it like a staff member out of that, that's where the auditors get a little bit like, now you're paying adults out of this, we don't know, like if that can be okay. I mean, not to make joke of like the esports, but we couldn't turn
Right.
around and pay an adult an esports.
No, I get
stipend
that,
out
but I
of
mean, there's
that.
something in the parking lot, I mean, you can paint the
Yeah.
parking lot, but you can't have someone out there securing it.
Yeah, I hear you, I think it's a valid point, and believe me, I would love to do
So what
But
if-
auditors in my past have slapped me on the wrist for
Okay,
trying
so
to do those
this
type of things.
person is to direct the people who are the students parking, the adults
One,
parking?
there's parent drop off and there's one in the student parking lot. But can I ask an equity question?
Yeah.
I mean, GMS and LMS, I think, have teachers that are there doing duty more than 10 minutes before.
Yeah.
Why would, I guess I'm trying to understand why we would pay CHS above and beyond when, or would that create a slippery slope of we now have to pay teachers at GMS and LMS? My understanding, and again, I haven't dropped off in GMS in a while, is there are teachers out there, they're almost all out there, you know? Why is that
They
different?
come out at 8:10 is when they come out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, at 8:10, we start parent drop-off, and we have,
Is that when their contract starts? 8:10?
No?
well, it's 10 minutes before the arrival of students. So when we set the arrival of students at 8:10,
So they would be covered by that from a contract standpoint.
yeah.
And they rotate.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's by,
I'm
it's
just trying to
by week.
understand the
I think
difference.
it's a
But
very valid.
the way they do it
Yeah.
is covered by the contract, because they don't have kids drive, they don't have kids coming
Not-
super early.
Yeah.
Not always, and I'm gonna say this of an example, for example, if we have a very long parent pickup line or a very late bus like we did today, those people are standing there with kids outside until the bus gets there.
Yeah.
It was 25 minutes late today, that's well past their contracted time.
Morning is much more controlled. Morning is 8:10 to 8:25. And it's 4 staff members, and then in the afternoon, it requires, 6 staff members, 3 for the parent pickup, and then 3 come out, and it's actually a pretty quick one, because it's really just walking students out for the buses roll out,
Right.
and they come back in. So,
Having-
10 duty positions a day.
Conversation we're
Having
having.
dropped off and having a student in that parking lot, I wholeheartedly support having staff members out there monitoring arrival and pickup at the end of the day. But I agree with the equity issue. I'm wondering if that's
So the reality is, if part of it is to do with student parking, then I'd rewrite the fee structure to cover that person. And the reality is, if buses are late, then, at least where I am, they relieve the teachers and an admin stands out there with the kids. I mean, I get it, but I mean, at the same time, we wanna do what's best for the students. So, is that the teacher or is it somebody else? I don't know. But it sounds like it's beyond scope of here, and probably a policy thing that the school board needs to look at.
We're hearing this for the first time, so.
No, I'm just saying, how it works, I mean, there are a number of ways to get coverage without necessarily going to the taxpayer first.
All right, next we have an additional digital learning specialist. We have a digital learning specialist right now who is spread among all 3 schools. That would make, would be GMS, LMS, so was it
K
to
to 6.
split one
K
K
K
to
to
6
6.
and
One-
then
Split one
7-12.
K to 6 and split one 7-12. So we would have half and half in our building.
What does that position do?
So
Digital
many
learning.
things. So many things. There aren't enough hours in the day, actually. The person that we have, she's a rock star. Her name's Karen Desjardins. She works with our staff on helping them to integrate technology in appropriate ways so that, as Carrie was talking about, it's not kids surfing the internet on the wrong sites during classes. She's giving them, right now AI is huge. And as we are trying to get kids to learn how to use AI responsibly, she's incorporating, and with my staff in the middle school, she spent an inordinate amount of time helping train teachers and using some new software and online sources and how to help kids learn how to responsibly and appropriately use AI without cheating. Additionally, she's supported immensely. We did for LMS this year at One Book, One School. We've done a posted entire school read this fall. She's helped to formulate some instructional materials, outside sources. So she's just a kind of a jack of all trades who's there to help instructional practices. It's not just, here, this is a computer, learn how to use a computer. It's really about what's going on within the computer to help the teachers be most effective to meet our digital natives, which are our students who are light years above where our teachers are, and that's not a dig at the teachers in any way, shape, or
I-
form.
I heard,
Just trying
I
to
heard an
keep up.
analogy a couple months ago too, and it was about digital learning specialists, and they said it was just the pace at which technology changes. You get a digital learning specialist, the same reason why you have a financial advisor. Yeah, if you want, you can invest your money and you can watch the stock market and you can do all of those things. But you got other things to do with your life too. This person also stays on top of the trends and is able to, first off, stay on top of the trends, weed through what's the good stuff, what's the bad stuff, and almost acts as a filter as to what's going to be good and enhancing to the curriculum and to the student's experience, as opposed to, without that, it's a wild, wild west and good luck. So,
best
He and I have
analogy I've
actually
ever-
partnered quite a bit
pretty solid.
this
that.
year, and we've talked a lot about those exact things, and we've really worked through like what's going on and how is it being used in the classroom effectively instructionally. And we've done some lunch and learns and a lot of different things, so our collaboration between digital and curriculum is quite strong with that position. We currently have one math tutor at LMS, and they are looking.
I thought we expanded that a couple years ago, did we not?
No, we have 1.5, we have a reading specialist and a half-time reading tutor. This would bring us to two full-time math tutors. It's desperately needed for tier 2 services and supports to help get our students up to speed, and I won't use the C word, but COVID lag is still really a thing, and we want to close those gaps so that we can get our kids being ready for the next generation of what they're doing, and be ready for the rigorous courses that our high school is offering, and be ready for the future. So we want to have, not only are we working to beef up our tier 1 instruction with the support of Dr. Taylor and all the work that she's doing with curriculum alignment and helping to get those programs in place that are helping our students and that everybody in the classroom work, but we need to have, I believe we need a significant boost. Right now we have one person, but she cannot cover all 4 grades. This would allow us to have a person who's designated for grades 5 and 6 and a person who's designated for grades 7 and 8 to close those gaps across the board and help improve our student learning and inevitably, hopefully, our test scores with that.
Just for budget committee, when we talk about tier 1 and tier 2.
I was just gonna ask what's tier 1 and tier 2.
So tier 1 instruction is your general classroom, like your whole class instruction. So all the students learning the same thing at the same time. Tier 2 instruction is for those students who might not be ready to access that lesson or need a little more time or a little more practice to master it. And it's kind of that intermediary that if you can catch kids before they fall into tier 3, which is now special services, you know, you can.
Tier 1 is general, tier 2 is
Yeah.
targeted, tier 3 is systematic.
Yeah.
So,
Are there adjectives that you associate?
It's like an
with it?
80-15-5
Five.
breakdown.
Yeah.
Roughly about 80% of your students are in that tier 1, need that type of instruction. 15% of your students, this is very
Very
big,
big, yeah,
big, like
general.
number, general, but 15% of your students need that kind of tier 2 instruction, and about 5% need that really intensive tier 3 instruction.
when I,
And ideally, tier 2 is like a targeted, it can sometimes be a zap, like 6 weeks, and then you're back on track, or you
Yeah.
got that one skill and then you're back on the general.
when I came to LMS, this is now my 3.5 years ago, when I came to LMS, we only had tier 3 instruction. It was, our reading specialists were wholeheartedly tied to special services and tied to administering IEPs. We've worked on shifting that responsibility back to the case managers and using those reading tutors for tier 2 instruction. And we've seen incredible gains with the students that they're servicing. We have data to prove that that reading tutor model is working, and reading specialist, actually, they're not reading tutors, they're reading specialists.
Yeah.
That reading specialist model has been very effective. We want to be able to mimic that using the data, showing where kids are in short stints. It's 6 to 8 weeks of an intensive support. Maybe it's numbers and operations. They need to learn, you know, how to multiply and divide, and it's something, it's a skill that they missed somewhere along the way. This is a place where they can get a quick boost in that and then go back to regular work. This would be something that would be happening during UAs so that they're not missing out on additional regular instruction, but it's something that we find is really important for their learning.
So tier 3 are the services that have higher legal requirements, right?
Right.
So.
Depends on your philosophy. I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole. There are some people who feel that tier 3 is special education, and there are some people who feel tier 3 is not special education. I think regardless of how you view it, it's your most intensive student. So I don't want to fully commit it's like required services because there are certain models that,
But for all
but
intents-
in all intents versus people need serious intervention there. Yeah.
So if we could head it off sooner.
That's the
we
idea.
potentially could.
Because it's kind of that
recognize
system, right? You're hoping I mean, in an ideal world, you have wonderful tier 1 instruction and practices, and you can move that 80% number closer to, a 90% or 95% number, right? But I think in the reality of just how kids learn and do things, you're gonna be floating around that 80. If you're less than that 80, that's a real problem. You gotta address kind of those tier 1 practices that you're doing in the classroom and stuff. And that's not to say 80% of your kids are going to be proficient in a measure. That's a different thing. It's just practices and dynamics you use. Like a tier 1 instructional thing is guided notes, for example, right? Like that benefits, it's a really simple thing, but it benefits the entire population. It's a universal instructional tool that will benefit all your kids. So that would be like a tier 1 approach. A tier 2 approach, the high school, for example, has their what do you call it, CAG time? CAG time. So where the kid can go get, special, like individual support or small group support from a teacher or something like that. That'd be an example of a tier 2 kind of practice where a tier 3 could be that they are given, specific instruction by a specialist, such as a math tutor, someone like that, to really hone in on this problem skill. Like really struggling on fractions. Why is that? Let's break that down. Like where is your problem with that particular skill?
Moving on.
Our building and grounds.
Yeah, so this is, sorry, I didn't mean to jump
No,
in.
go ahead, I was gonna.
Kind of bringing,
Brian, can I circle back to the parking lot thing real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanna, the contract language says the teacher's day is 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after the student day. It's not student arrival. So our student day at the high school starts at 7:35. Our students start arriving at 7 o'clock. That's when drop-off first starts for CTE and that sort of thing. So that's why at the high school, and again, I'm only speaking for my building, that's why traditionally this has been a paid position because it's work outside of contracted hours.
so next is a building and grounds manager. This is a position that used to be here in the district, I think in previous configurations of facility department. We would like to pursue rebringing this kind of position back. We would couple this with reducing the ground position that we cannot fill. So we're looking to not only reduce that position, but to gather some savings in some other avenues. You heard me mention about the school due program. We think we can do more of what that offers internally to drive down the amount of money and possibly eliminate it altogether. If we had persons such as this position right here who could handle some of the requests and maintenance requests and how we help to categorize that and execute, making sure that's followed through on. Other areas where this would help on is we have a number of contracts with groups like Viking Controls, which is monitoring our HVAC systems and other systems that we have. We would like to be less reliant on people outside the building and more reliant on our own people. So we're hoping to gather actually some savings by having our own people up to speed on this and not being as reliant on outside people. So we want, and we also can't fill that grounds position as a reality. It's been open for a long, long time. We still have those needs. This position would still help with those needs and be a part of that. But we're trying to approach that need of additional support for our facilities team. We really got, two guys kind of doing facilities for 3 buildings in the entire district. So some additional support, which is in terms of, we got the extra grounds position. So we're just attempting kind of a reshuffling of the deck here to help save us in some other places and maybe a more successful attempt to find someone to help out our team there.
Wasn't that the downfall from the high school though, when we took the, overseeing the systems and like Honeywell was doing it and we decided to go in-house and because of that now like everything is just like messed up and that's why we went with a service that.
I don't think the controls contractor would be a good example for bringing in-house.
That's fair. I mean, that's one thing we've done other places I've been is bring those things in-house and have had success. I don't have the history here, obviously, of
Not good.
Usually when
other
you
people,
sever the
but.
contract with your controllers, you separate the controls.
Yeah, we're not severing it completely. What we're looking to do is reduce some of the amount, because it's extraordinary, the amounts that we're paying some of these groups. And we're looking to reduce that, not to get completely rid of some of those, but I certainly will look more into it and look at more of the history, but, you know, as an outsider coming in, that jumped out, like, why are we paying so
There's
much?
certain ones we used to like have funny names for them on my construction trailer that may have involved the mafia associated with them. There's certain ones you just pay. You have no control, literally no control.
Yeah,
Because if you don't pay, you have no control.
yeah.
So I can see bringing some other stuff in-house, but
Yeah.
the last time we tried doing controls, we have the situation we have now.
Yeah, that's a good note, I appreciate
We've been
that.
talking on the facilities committee though, I mean, one of the big focuses that we need to really get behind is maintaining our buildings, right? And we are in the process right now, onsite, insight is going on to day 3, I think, where are they tomorrow at the middle school?
They're gonna be at the middle school tomorrow.
And so they're really analyzing all of our buildings, but the one thing, you know, I was able to walk through on the first day with them, I mean, there's just, it's an inordinate amount of work to try to maintain those buildings, and we need to find a better way of doing it, so.
But again, we'll have better controlling our buildings if we actually have controls.
Oh, yeah.
When we killed off the last contract, they cut the cord, and then you were gonna say, oh, but he has to go around and manually open and close valves. Well, yeah, because we no longer have control.
It's more than just that, though, Gary, it's.
Alright, well, let's stay focused,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what would the structure, so we went to, once upon a time we had a manager and then people under him, and then we had 2 separate people who were equal but different. So what are we going back to?
Yeah, so we still have Dave, who's the facility kind of director. We have Joe, who's kind of the custodial side of thing, kind of managing everything
So
here.
like laterally?
Yeah, so we kind of the equivalent of Joe there, so the building maintenance. Dave oversees both of them, and then they oversee people under them. Different size teams underneath them, but that's kind of the structure, is the balance to Joe there, so. And again, part of this is getting rid of the grounds position that's just vacant and we can't fill. We need that help, like, it would be great to have another grounds person. Now, whether it's from a salary standpoint or some other standpoint, or just, you know, you can do similar work and be a part of a landscaping firm and get paid more money, so we're struggling to find someone. If we approach this from a different avenue, you know, and a different way where we have more success for hiring, that's part of the calculus with this as well, so.
At the very bottom of the spreadsheet, we have, the reduction of the grounds position, that's also not in this budget.
Yeah.
Just to kind of show you that.
Right there.
The last thing that we have is a network administrator. Chris, I'm gonna let you talk to them.
Yeah, so last year I proposed an extra technician, and that kind of just died off, and as you all agreed, I was pretty understaffed. This is a different opportunity and a better opportunity. So a network administrator, what that would allow is, we have a lot of servers and switches and just general configurations that are old, out of date, coming to end of life. So instead of something catastrophic happening, having someone in place already that can start working on doing these upgrades and these configurations and getting things in a better place. Currently, everything is like where it could be, but you're talking in a couple of years, all my switches are no longer getting firmware updates, which is now a security issue. Our servers I have that are getting up there in age as well. I don't want to mention some of them because they're pretty bad, but those are the things that this would be handling. So that would be taking care of the network, our configurations, our Wi-Fi that we have, data security, because we have a lot of stuff on site, but we also still have stuff virtually. We do a little bit of both. Currently, we have 2 setups for Wi-Fi, which is just like impossible to manage. There's all these things on top of what I'm doing, because right now I have an IT technician that's not their job. They don't understand this kind of thing. So it is more than a full-time job, and there's a network overhaul that needs to be happening in the next few years.
So are we not working on replacing switches, on like a couple switches a year?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yep,
Who's doing this work now, Chris?
that's me, when I can.
Okay.
So, when I can get in there, I'm doing all the switches, but we have a separate network just for like Chromebooks, we have a separate network for staff laptops, we have a separate network for our cameras, separate network for phones. So these are all different networks that need to be managed, upgraded, configured, looked at. We put a new Wi-Fi in LMS. That actually isn't up and running yet. They're in place, but I don't have enough time to go into the ceilings, plug them, make sure that the configuration is correct, and then move on. That's.
It would be so great to be upgraded at LMS.
They still have the system, don't get me wrong, that part of the two systems, and they just didn't have enough time on top of everything else to go to each access point, set them up individually, and keep moving on. So, that's what this position would be able to help out with. I'd work closely with that person, and we'd get a new network. It's not always just gonna be parts that we need to buy for network, it's just configuration sometimes too, and that takes, you have to touch the server, and every single switch that device is going to, which can take a long time to do. So that's kind of what this position was for. And then they would also be able to help with the day-to-day, projectors down and stuff like that. I can send them off while I'm working on budget stuff, for example.
Follow up, Chris, not talking about maintenance contracts for equipment and stuff, but are there additional, we haven't looked at your tech budget yet, but are there additional potential cost savings with external contracts or people that may come in to do this work that could offset that cost?
Yes, yeah, there's a huge, I haven't budgeted that I will need those. If this position goes through, those costs will go down significantly. Talking about just getting someone out to do, I don't know, fixing our phones is $500, right off the bat, things like that. So those things add up really quickly. I think last year when I proposed it for the IT technician, it was around $15,000, $16,000 that was just contracted services and stuff that I had to call in because there wasn't enough time or I didn't know how to get to it in time and stuff like that. This would offset a lot of those. I'd have to look a little bit more as to which lines it would come from, but I had to budget it in case I do need someone to come in and fix whatever is in case. Intercom system's a big one, those will be getting replaced soon, but again, those are still, we had to go through and GMS alone, I think we had to do 7 rooms this year where the intercoms just stopped working. That has nothing to do with the new intercom, those are just the wires in the background, which someone had to come in and take care of all that for me. Because I can't get in the ceiling for, I think it took them 4 days to do it all.
And Chris, to go in the Wayback Machine to last year, when you brought forward that extra technician, you had the cohort comparisons.
The lowest in the cohort, yes, I can share that out again. The lowest number of employees in an IT department in our cohort.
I don't understand the tech stuff like Chris thinks. I know I am super paranoid about the data breaches that are happening more and more in schools. We used to think we were kind of immune to it in the school world, we would get left alone, but we're clearly not, and it doesn't take too far to look at districts that have unfortunately suffered that. Hudson and Nashua are 2 recent ones. Maybe I'm biased, I went to a conference last week where they were the 2 featured presenters and talked about the hundreds of thousands of dollars it costs their respective districts and just everything associated with it. I mean, we felt a little bit here because we couldn't get the CTE grades from Hudson until I want to say it was late July before we got them here, when that hit them in June. So if this helps that, I trust Chris on all the other stuff, but yeah,
so
but
instead of me going, oh, our print server is down, I could have been taking care of that actively before and getting a new one up and running. So I'll just Band-Aid this one until we have the time to fix that.
Yeah, but anything that helps us sleep better about that, that's one of my greatest fears as a superintendent is encountering that type of scenario, so. So I think that's all of our personnel, and I think that's everything we kind of have today, and we'll open it back up for questions, but just to summarize, how we view this process is obviously a collaboration, and we just finished up positions there. We're not naive enough to believe all those positions are going to move forward, but we want to be transparent on where we see our needs and the directions we're going from an educational standpoint and for the district. And we want to be kind of open in the dialogue that goes through that. And then you expand that not just with personnel, but with everything. I found this a really helpful process to hear people's questions and the angles that you're asking things at, and allows us to think about our proposals and whether they're fully there yet, whether they're not fully there yet, and everything kind of in between. I encourage you to use the kind of spreadsheets that we shared out for questions, so we can do some research and come back to these meetings and have answers. I mean, I feel like that's part of our responsibility when we propose a budget. If we can't answer this question to the people in this room, how do we expect a voter to get behind what we're proposing? So it's a good challenge for us to get behind it. We may disagree on our answer, like you may say, I don't believe your answer, but I just disagree from a philosophy standpoint. That's fine, that's not personal. But if we can't even give our perspective and the reasoning for that and justification, then it is correct. We need to re-examine something that we propose and look at it in a different direction. So please give us questions so we can answer. We like to share. We want to give that information to you because we do feel strongly with what we want to propose and feel everyone is confident behind it.
Right.
So I'll ask it one more time if there's any last questions here while we're kind of all together here.
So Holly,
Yes.
I'm not sure if I'm missing something there, but I'm looking at, starting on page 24 for GMS counseling.
Or which one, are you
Personnel,
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 GMS?
personnel.
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 Okay, so
I'm
if you look at,
What? I'm looking at, you moved it from district-wide. But
yes.
it looks like you moved about $130,000 from district-wide.
So so the position, that we got added through the warrant last year was funded in this current budget under, psychological services, which is on page 29.
Yep.
So, as a school counselor, I wanna make sure we move the funding to where it belongs, which is under GMS.
So the big variance is, that was a warrant article position.
Yes.
No,
No, it was a floor, it was a floor addition.
Oh, sorry.
It was put into
Through the
the
budget.
budget, it went totally around the warrant process.
But so
in the
it's an
budget.
additional position, that's why the
Yes.
big increase.
It was a
in
voter
comparison.
approved
Yeah.
position, but not through the warrant, but through the budget.
And you see, and it's just putting it where,
No, that's where the variance is,
Funded,
that's,
yeah.
all right. I
This
got
was
it.
done on the floor. It's on,
There's a
Yeah.
floor
on
ad.
page
Sorry
30,
about
Brian, you see where
She's
she
not
backed
bitter
it
though.
out.
Following up on that
The
though?
words I have for it would not be appropriate for television.
You see it.
Yeah, 54,000, I just put, I was trying to find
Yeah,
what it
it's only,
says, it's like
it was from the floor.
130,000.
Nobody had
Yeah,
all of these.
Well, there's 81, 32.
Yeah.
If you look at,
Sure.
I think it's page 30.
so you see the add and the subtract, just to show you the.
It's under psychological services.
Yeah, I'm there.
See where it's backed out, like 81,000.
You go to page 29.
We go to GMS
If
counseling.
you go to page 29, the deduction is only like 40 grand from district-wide.
Right, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
right,
No, go to the next page. Go to the next page, Derek. Question.
so page 26.
So under district-wide psych services too, it's a little weird because every year, under that line, it changes a little bit because there's certain percentages from that line that are funded through grants and some are funded through the general fund. So that's why that salary line is only coming
Okay.
down.
So remove 81,000, but the net effect was like 41,000 because there's 40,000 in grants that aren't there anymore.
Correct,
That was all I'm looking for. Got it. That makes
sorry.
Holly, I have a quick question. How many teachers have 6-period classes?
Two at the high school.
Just 2?
How, 2 at the high school, but we have, because we do not have, we have a lack of para positions, we are paying special services staff who are working through their planning time.
And how many periods are in a day?
4 at the high school, 8
So
at
so
the...
it's an
rotating.
8-period block,
Yeah.
and you only have to teach 5. That's interesting.
We only have 7 periods.
We just have one big one.
Never ends.
So one big period.
School day.
Couple of big
Couple of breaks in between lunch.
I love elementary school. I feel it's,
No.
I miss my
God bless
college.
you
It's
guys,
do our
you know?
thing. Yeah, it's great.
Middle school is where it's at. You gotta just.
All right, what other
Feel the
questions
vibe.
tonight? I do see some questions in the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
a couple of them in there already, so that's great. I encourage the budget committee and others to get in there and start doing it. I know the school board has our own spreadsheet, which there's still some outstanding questions in there as
Yes,
well.
definitely.
Just as a reminder for everybody, we're back in here next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, for the remaining directors and team to come in and present.
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, yes, the 13th.
And just for those of us who really don't care for Google, can you send me the link again so I can access
To
that
what?
file? To my,
To the question?
the link to the file, because I don't know.
The superintendent sent it
Oh,
out.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's fine. Did it?
I forwarded it tonight, right before the
Oh,
meeting
okay.
started. I
I was
said,
gonna say, 'cause I don't think I've seen said
yeah,
that.
it was at like
So-
6:55.
Yeah, I
Here it
just sent it
is.
out earlier
Well, then
today.
explain why I
Yep.
couldn't find it. That's good. So
I sent it right before it started.
I will
Chris.
put a bookmark on
I
it.
added that question in there about like the professional services contracts.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for this evening?
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you very much. Have a great night. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Guys.
I need to adjourn.
You guys go
Well,
back.
it's like 2200.